Israel Update with Taub and Mike Duran. Hello and welcome to Tablet's Israel Update. It's been 277 days to this war. Today is July 9th, 2024. And Mike is back in a disclosed location. And Mike, is that a Hudson tie that you're wearing?
That's. Do you actually know what this is?
No, but it looks like the whole Hudson visual language.
I do this to fool the masses because it people do think it's a Hudson tie, but actually. I thought you might have known the secret. I shouldn't tell you this to people.
These are not your initials, Mike. Why
no, it's not. It says RTE. Do you know what that is?
No.
Recep Tayyip Erdogan.
Ah, it's a tie you got from Turkey?
And not just from Turkey. I got it from the president.
Erdogan himself.
Yeah, he handed it to me. Yeah.
Wow.
He pointed at the tie I was wearing and he said, "The tie I'm giving you is a lot more attractive than the one that you're wearing." And I said,
fashion advice from Erdogan.
I said, "Mr. President, my wife gave me this tie," and he said, "Oh, in that case, no, it's not. It's not more attractive."
He backed off.
But I have to say, it's a nice tie, isn't it? And it looks like a
nice tie,
and it looks like Hudson colors. It fools the masses. They don't know that I'm
that you're an agent of Turkey. Of course, they know. They know.
Well, they know, but they don't know how, the extent to which I'm manifesting my heresy and
at work. So I've got one piece of information that you'd be interested in. I think I hinted at this on our last show at the end, but we now have this show with Hebrew subtitles on my Hebrew podcast channel. So it airs on Rumble and it airs on the Tablet website, and we have our own Israel Update channel on YouTube. But on my YouTube channel, Gatekeeper channel, it gets huge numbers of views, which means, Mike, that Israelis have no better source for understanding their own news than our podcast. Imagine this: they read all the Hebrew press and then they come to listen to us with Hebrew subtitles, courtesy of a guy who's now doing this for me, whose name is Nevo Shafir. And I think we should also give credit to our new producer at Hudson, right?
Oh, Yaakov Vilner. Yes.
Yeah.
He's yes. We should give him credit. I actually forgot to ask him whether he wants credit. So,
but now he has it whether he wants it or not.
Yes.
And tell him that editing things out is a nightmare on Zoom, and that he had better accept the credit as it is. But as you see, our show is much more organized ever since.
Yeah, we've gotten a little more organized, and we're going to get more organized. By the way, on that note, I have an idea, and I should have talked to you about this before we started taping. But there you go. We're doing this right in the middle of everything. I was reading through some of the comments on YouTube, and there were a lot of constructive criticisms, corrections, questions that people were putting out. So I thought we ought to have a little segment in maybe every show or periodically where we respond to what people say, because some of it was very constructive. So we should have like a tag that they put on it that they want to have their question addressed. I don't think we could do all of them, but let's just say talk back or something like that, and then we put that in there. And
great idea, sure.
And we'll do our best to engage because we have a community here.
And as I say to audiences when I lecture, keep your questions short because my answers are very long. I think that's also going to be true. Also going to be.
That reminds me, when I was a student in Israel, I stole a line from somebody, which I've used ever since for the last 40 years. I've used this line. It never gets a laugh, but I think it's really funny. Is that I tell the people when I'm slow to catch on to something, I say, I understand quickly if you explain slowly.
Oh, it's a very common thing in Hebrew. Everybody knows it.
Yeah, but it's not common. It's not common in English, and it never gets a laugh, and I don't understand why. I'm delivering it wrong somehow.
Maybe you're delivering it convincingly. Maybe that's
yeah, they feel sorry for me.
Yeah.
All right, let's get down to business here. Let's get down to business.
Let's start with the news bulletin.
All right, I got 6 items that have transpired over the last week that I want to talk to you about, or that I think we should address. The first, it really has it's just the state of the debate over Biden. I think we should stay on top of that, even though it's not directly related to the war. So yesterday, that's on Monday the 8th, Congressman Adam Smith, he's the top Democrat on the Armed Services Committee. He became
Adam Schiff.
Adam Smith.
Adam Smith. Is that I thought he's dead.
He lives on in a new incarnation. He's a congressman from Washington State.
Oh, okay.
Hasn't written any books as far as I know. But anyway, he's an intelligent guy. He's among those you'd say, thoughtful congressman. And he's come out very clearly against President Biden continuing in the race. He told the media that we need a stronger messenger. And interestingly, he supported Kamala Harris as the alternative. Now, Gadi, last week I told you that we're going to be hearing the slogan among Biden supporters that it's the team, not the man. And that's the slogan that will compensate for the fact that they can't now hide or deny his infirmities. But what I'm seeing here is that Biden's critics are coalescing increasingly, I think, around Kamala Harris. They have to find someone so they don't have a big fight between all of the different potential candidates. So I think what we're going to hear more and more we should listen for is that Kamala Harris is ready. She's really grown a lot in the last year. That's because they have to make up for the fact that historically she hasn't really looked up to the job, and she's polled, more importantly, she's polled far below President Biden. Okay, on to the second issue. The climate in Europe shifted significantly to the disadvantage of Israel over the last week. The British Labour Party has returned to power. Corbynism is alive and well in the Labour Party. David Lammy, he's the new foreign minister in Britain, reiterated that Labour, he said it one time and then repeated that Labour would seek to implement an arrest warrant against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu if one was issued by the International Criminal Court. He's talking about returning balance to the foreign policy of Britain with respect to the Israeli, to the war in Gaza. At the same time, we had an election in France, and there was this surge of the right wing, but then the establishment or all the other parties worked together to suppress the right, and we now have basically communists in charge of the French government. The leader of France's left wing, New Popular Front, pledged to recognize the Palestinian state as soon as possible. And in response to that, the former Israeli Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman called on French Jews to leave the country for Israel. In a third item, Israel assassinated a senior Hezbollah commander, Mohammed Niman Nasser. This is one of the most high-ranking officials that the Israelis have targeted. He was a key node in the air defense systems of Hezbollah, and therefore in facilitating the transfer of Iranian technology from Iran to Lebanon. Hezbollah responded with a severe rocket barrage in northern Israel. But now, obviously, the most important news, and this is the fourth item, is that an Israeli delegation headed by the Shabak director, that's the General Security Services Director, Ronen Bar, arrived in Cairo yesterday. The delegation also includes the director of the political security staff in the defense ministry and a number of other officials. It's a high-level delegation, and they are there at the same time that the National Security Council senior director for the Middle East, that's Brett McGurk, you and I talked about, I think, last time, and CIA Director William Burns have also arrived. So what we've got is very high-powered delegations in Egypt to talk with the Egyptian intelligence director Abbas Kamal about the ceasefire deal that's on the table. So we're, I think, closer than we've ever been before to a hostages for prisoners deal. On Sunday night, and this would be the fifth item, Prime Minister Netanyahu issued a statement that his critics are saying was intended to scuttle the deal. First of all, what's in the deal? In the first stage, 33 women and ailing hostages will be released. Then the remaining living hostages will be freed in the second stage of the deal. In those two stages, hundreds of the Palestinian terrorists are going to be released from Israeli prisons, including some with blood on their hands. Then there will be a third stage when the dead bodies will be returned from captivity. Of course, there will be a ceasefire throughout all the stages, certainly through the first stage, and then the Americans hope that it will continue in the second and the third stage. And the Americans obviously want this to turn into a permanent peace. In a statement on Sunday night, though, Netanyahu said that he would only agree to a deal that would, quote, allow Israel to resume fighting until all of the objectives of the war have been achieved. His comments, and this is the sixth item, his comments have sparked a firestorm of debate in Israel, with, as I said, his critics saying that he's trying to scuttle the deal entirely, and supporters in the Likud and elsewhere, such as Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, are saying that if this deal goes through, it's a disaster for Israel. The left is saying, no, this is the only way to get the hostages back. Yair Lapid, leader of the opposition, has said, don't worry, Prime Minister Netanyahu, as much as I think you are a disaster for Israel and the worst prime minister ever, and as much as you are responsible for October 7th, if Smotrich and Ben-Gvir leave your coalition, I will come in and support it in order to get this deal done. So, Gadi, that's where we're at. Back over to you.
Yeah, the talk of the deal is, of course, the top of the news here in Israel, and it's amazing how lowbrow the whole discussion is, and how the manipulators are framing it in a way that stupefies the whole debate. If you walk into Hebrew Twitter, then you will see on your left, in the left-wing feed, that there are only two positions, according to these people. You're either a hateful, evil right-winger who hates the hostages and is willing to let them wither away, be raped and tortured, or else you're a good person and you support the deal at any price. So what the press has done is that there is no argument about strategy. Everything is whipping up emotional frenzy around the hostage question, in which you cannot make the argument that being defeated in this war is a danger to Israel's existence. This is the complete demise of any strategic thought. Now, of course, the public is much smarter than that, but the press here, or the mainstream press, it's like the press suppressing the Hunter Biden laptop, or the press telling you that Biden on one-on-one is absolutely clear. It's they will not have it any other way. And so there is in the press, there is no debate to speak of.
So, Gadi, I understand that the debate, the public debate, is going to be driven by the emotional question of the hostages. But I do think that behind all of this, there is a kind of more intellectually serious debate going on about two issues. One is, what is victory in this war? Number one. And number two, the day after. What's they're completely related, of course. What's victory and what does the day after look like? But I think this is the point now where the rubber really meets the road, where there's been something kind of unreal about these day after debates until now. But now that why is this the case? Because now the military has destroyed all of the major battalions. And so this means that as one can make the argument, and it's a serious argument, I believe, that the threat of a serious Hamas attack on the Gaza periphery has been eliminated. Whether now the question is, does that mean that Hamas as a ruling institution, because we had three goals for the war, right, that everybody agreed on: return the hostages, end Hamas's ability to threaten Israel in a serious fashion, and then third, end Hamas's ability to be the ruling institution in Gaza.
Not exactly, Mike. Not exactly. This is not how Netanyahu phrases it. First of all, the first goal is to destroy Hamas's military capabilities and its ability to rule. Second, return the hostages. Third, make sure that Gaza is never again a threat to Israel. That's the strict way he puts it. Yeah.
Okay. Let's accept that formulation. An argument can be made. A serious argument can be made that they have reached that point. I don't believe it, actually. I don't find it convincing, but it's not a silly argument. And I think just before we started taping this, you said that you quoted me the spokesman of Sahel of the IDF.
Yeah. Hamas will exist 5 years from now too.
That's the argument. The argument is the serious argument is, look, who are we kidding? It's put in a kind of facile way to say we can't kill an idea. But the fact of the matter is that there are going to be Hamas supporters, and I think this is a fact. No matter what Israel does, you're not going to completely get rid of Hamas. You can weaken it enormously. You can eliminate its capabilities. You can put it on the defensive constantly. But it's so embedded in the population there that if you say that we're going to continue fighting until there's no one expressing a Hamas position ever again, then the fighting is going to go on forever and ever. So at some point they're going to have to say, okay, we've done enough, and we can say that this actually meets the goals. I personally think that they have more to do, but it is a serious argument.
Mm-hmm.
You disagree?
It's a matter of calibrating. Am I pronouncing that word finally right? It's a matter of
calibrating. Yeah,
calibrating. It's a matter of what's the level of resolution that you are looking into the question. Of course, there will be people who support Hamas in their hearts. Of course, there will be people who would support Hamas and talk about this with their friends. But institutionally and into the level of schools and also mosques, we can't let Hamas have a foothold anywhere. And this is why I think that we are very far away from the terms that Israel should set itself. And as you know, I think there is no way to end this before we have military and civil control of all the Gaza Strip. I spoke to General Uzi Dayan, who was deputy chief of staff of the IDF, who said, we're kidding ourselves. We need to say that at least for 3 years, you would have a full occupation of the Gaza Strip everywhere, including civil administration of everything. And so
I think the military, sorry, go ahead.
What is your caveat?
I think I sent you just before we started here. I wonder if you wouldn't mind editing in to this. I don't know if you saw it. Some guy on Twitter put out a map showing all of the areas that the IDF has not entered into in Gaza. Did you see that?
I saw it. Let me see if I can share it on the screen now. Yeah, but keep going.
Because it's really quite remarkable. My sense is that the IDF strongly does not want to control all of Gaza. And that's
you're absolutely right, Mike.
That's the dilemma they have, and I understand them in not wanting that. It's a huge burden. It isn't the one that they trained for. It's incredibly expensive, and they're looking up at Hezbollah in the north. And so, let's not let the argument is, let's not let the perfect be the enemy of the good. We are going to have to deal with this problem forever and manage it just like we did in the past. This is not popular to say right now, but that's the case because we have bigger fish to fry in the north. That's a serious that's also a serious argument.
This can be done in stages. We are now if you were watching us on video, you can see the map. All the area that is circled in red is where the IDF has no control and has not been.
I just have to say, according to some guy on Twitter,
according to some guy on Twitter who says that he constructed this map by according to the IDF information. If you're listening to us on audio, this looks very ominous. How would you say, Mike? This is 2/3 of the Gaza Strip are not under Israeli control, according to this map.
I think most of the Gaza Strip isn't under the Israeli control. But what he's saying is that they've never gone in there.
Yeah. So this guy on Twitter also said, so if the hostages and the leadership, if you're asking where the hostages are and where the leadership of Hamas is, here is where they can be. But here's my take on it, Mike. I don't think that achieving the maximal goals that I've outlined is something that is going to happen very quickly. I think that now that we are on the Philadelphia corridor and can really implement a siege of Hamas, which we couldn't do until now because there were highways there. They now found tunnels that are 3-tier tunnels, 3 levels in which cars can drive. So there's a huge industry of smuggling through the Egyptian border. And if we control that, then we can slowly turn the wrench. And I don't know what this means in terms of how many soldiers we need to keep on the ground, but I'm sure we can do it in various ways. But what the army is trying to do, the army is trying to sell to the Israeli public something that I think is completely imaginary. And that is the idea that we can accept the deal, withdraw, and then penetrate Gaza with surgical invasions. It's not invasions. It's a surgical operation. Incursions. And that is simply not a viable option. We need, first of all, to control the perimeter. And then we need to slowly turn the wrench and suffocate Hamas and begin to control the aid that's flowing inside and stop their ability to smuggle weapons.
I can reveal to you here that I have on a pretty good authority that there's a debate at the higher levels of the Israeli government now about whether to hold on to the Philadelphia corridor or not. I was surprised to hear that. I would have thought that every senior minister and every senior commander would understand the importance of what you just said about holding on to the Philadelphia corridor. I have this on very good authority, by the way.
But and the ministers who are supporting that position?
I'd prefer not to name.
Okay, so this,
but I do know.
I don't think that. So I don't have the means to get the information out of you, being distant and unable to grab your Erdogan tie from this distance. But this is this is not surprising because the upper echelons of the army, Mike, and I've been saying this, and people are outraged when I say it, and they think it's too extreme. The upper echelons, the brass of the IDF, do not want complete victory in this war because they're on the same page with the Americans, and they think that a weakened right-wing government, or else a toppled right-wing government that was unable to win the war, can be replaced by a more moderate government, which will be ripe for American imposition of the two-state solution. These people are part of the Oslo frame of mind, and they're unable to shake themselves from it. I don't know if you saw, but the commander of the Central Theater, the Eastern Theater,
Yehuda Fuchs.
General Yehuda Fuchs, has repeatedly said that the real danger in the West Bank are the settlers, and this is how he behaved. And after October 7th, he had a general exercise of his whole command. And what was the scenario that he had his huge command play out? A scenario in which settlers kidnap an Arab, and that ignites the territory. So we are facing another October 7, and the commander of the Central Theater is part of the international fraud called settler violence, in which the aim of which is to portray the Palestinian Authority, which is a hotbed of terrorism, as if that was our great hope for peace, and the problem or the obstacle is the settlers. So I think you're consistently underestimating the commitment of the right of the brass of the IDF to the anti-Bibi demonstrations and to the American administration. That is, if not a plot, these people are like-minded, and they are working to topple the government. This is their raison d'être. This is the someone like Herzi Halevi. This is a guess, right? This is a guess, but someone like Herzi Halevi, who by any sane standard should have resigned in shame after October 7, because for 8 hours, where was your army when people were slaughtered? Where was it? And you know, well, let me finish.
You're going too far.
No, I'm not going to. I mean, that's my opinion. And Herzi Halevi should have resigned. And I'm telling you, the reason he doesn't resign is that the army has developed a philosophy in which they are the gatekeepers of the wild, crazy politicians. And they are here to stop them. And this is why on October 7th, in the AM hours, when they had a consultation that they did not inform the Minister of Defense, the Minister of Security, or the Prime Minister. They are acting like an autonomous deep state arm, which is supposed to restrain the politicians rather than implement what the politicians ask them to do. Now you can protest, Professor Duran.
Oh, that was really me. That was below the belt, calling me a professor.
I'm sorry, Mike.
That was a not so subtle. Before I even speak, you diminished me. I can't believe I have half a mind to leave in a huff right now. So yeah, I don't totally agree with you. Because let me give you a fictional IDF commander. I don't agree that this is a point of disagreement between you and me over and over again. Because I know the IDF has always been in Israel from the beginning until yesterday. It has always been Tzava sheyesh lo medina. Always.
An army that has a state. Yeah.
An army that has a state. They have always seen themselves as the true custodians of the national interest, and they understand the things that the politicians don't understand. And there's never been the kind of civilian control over the military. Tight civilian control civilian control that is as tight as we've had in the United States, even though we've had episodes in the United States when it's been similar. So anyway, so I find your analysis a little bit too politicized. Also, I can imagine. Let me build for you a construct of an IDF officer who would say, if we gave him truth serum behind closed doors, he's talking to you, he listens to what you say, and he said, "Listen, Gadi, I am not making political judgment. Some of what you say is correct in terms of my distrust of these actors, Smotrich, Ben-Gvir, Netanyahu to a certain extent, and so on. But my calculations are purely military. And I see we have this threat. We have two threats right now that are the dominant threats that are not on everyone's mind, or that the public isn't focused on like they should be. But I, as a commander, have to be focused on. Those threats are from Iran itself and from Hezbollah. And I'm also concerned about maintaining international legitimacy for my fight against those two actors. And I have to be somewhat deferential to the Americans because we're not ready. Yes, we made a mistake. We made a huge mistake in terms of the war that we prepared for. We're having to train soldiers in the middle of this fight. But they are tired now. The soldiers are tired. The reservists are tired. A pause right now in the conflict would not be a bad thing because we can then rebuild for the conflict with Iran and Hezbollah, and we can also take steps in the meantime to lessen somewhat our dependence on the Americans, which right now is at an all-time high. That is we can't do anything as long as Biden is in power. He's not going to let us he's not going to let us take care of the Hezbollah threat like we need to. We can't go against them because if we go into Lebanon against the will of the Americans, Iran will unleash on us like it did on April 13th, and then we're going to need the Americans for that. So I understand what you're saying about Gaza, but it isn't the center of the show.
Mm-hmm. I don't think it's the center of the show either, but I think what you're underestimating, Mike, is the fact that they are trying to advance the two-state solution. They are on the same page with the Americans, and this is the horizon of the way they are planning their campaign in Gaza. And that planning is not geared towards an occupation. And this is for political reasons. And as you know, this is what the Americans are trying to impose on us. They're trying to push us back into the two-state track. And the army is educated in progressive American universities. As you see, general after general, when they take off their uniforms, they rally to the left-wing parties. They are, and there's by the way, there's a sociological explanation to how the army became so dovish. And it's not just the psychology of it, where in Israel, if you want to ingratiate yourself with the elites, you have to be in the peace camp. And this is also how to show that despite being a general, you're also humane and care.
Yeah, we have the same thing over here.
So, but there is also another sociological reason, which I think I mentioned when you stepped out of the room at Hudson when I was moderating a panel. And since most of our listeners were not in the panel, I'll repeat it here. Rabin did not trust the people that Peres had dealing with the Oslo track behind Rabin's back. The Oslo Agreement began with a secret track in Norway where Peres sent some academics as feelers to speak with Palestinian colleagues when it was illegal to speak with Fatah people. It was illegal for Israelis to do so. And then there was also a public channel through Washington.
I knew one of those guys, by the way, who went there to Oslo. Anyway, go ahead.
They called them the Blazers because they were wearing suits. So they were called Peres's Blazers. That's how Rabin called them. And when the public Washington track was stuck, Peres said to Rabin, there's a secret track and there's an advancement there. And when Rabin decided to go for the Oslo track, he replaced the Blazers with people he trusts. Now, who does General Rabin trust, Mike?
The military.
The military. So the military took over the Oslo negotiations, and there they were. So you have a whole generation of generals who were acculturated as negotiators in diplomacy in the Oslo track. I didn't invent all this. I took it from the marvelous book by Yuval Bloomberg called The Oslo Trap, in which he discusses this. But ever since, the army is committed to peace, not to war. We have an army committed to peace.
I don't know this book, and I want to read it. Is it in Hebrew or in English? And I want our avid followers, of whom there are many, many, many tens of thousands.
There actually are, we reached 25,000 on Rumble. I'm just saying, and the book is in Hebrew, but it's a huge volume, but you can read Hebrew, and it has it. I know the editor of the book, so they cut it down from 900 pages because Yuval Bloomberg is obsessed with all the details around.
And he, by the way, 900 pages of Hebrew is about 1,200, 1,300 pages of English,
something like that. Yeah. So it's not that anymore. I think it's just 500 now. But it's a very incisive book. And anyway, the army is committed, as you see, the army is committed to the vision of Oslo.
What I think is missing from Israel, what the Israel of the founders' generation, Ben Gurion's generation, had was they could live in the duality of the restrictions of the international norms, right? They could live in the, I used to, when I was a student in Israel, I there was this Israeli guy I would go to, older guy I would go to movies with, American guy who made Aliyah to America. And it always cracked me up because he
Aliyah from America.
From America, yeah, to what I say. Anyway, when you have the American movies, when they always end with a sappy resolution of all conflicts. So you have a father who used to get drunk and beat his son mercilessly when he's young, but then in the end, the father recognizes that he really shouldn't have beat the shit out of his son, and then they have a reconciliation and they walk down the beach together in the sunset and they love each other, and all of those conflicts are gone, right? And he would go, oi, goyish enachas. Like this is the stuff. This is the nonsense the goyim tell themselves to feel better about life, But this is not reality. So a guy like Ben Gurion could have the goals of Zionism and the necessities, the harsh necessities of Zionism based on the realities of the enterprise in the Middle East clearly in mind, and at the same time negotiate the international currents very, very comfortably, and I would say with unbelievable alacrity.
And with no virtue signaling. That's it, Mike.
They knew how to do that too. They did. They had lots of virtue signaling, and they had
that's not what I'm referring to here. These people in the army, you're referring to lip service to virtue signaling.
Even more than
generals.
He knew how to bob and weave and what to say when and that. But I'm also concerned about your Israeli right, who has I understand what you're saying about the military, and I understand what you're saying about how they have, let's call it, say, the worst among those people are vassals of the United States, and they will, whatever the United States comes up with, they will repeat it as if it's really sensible. But there's another side, of the Israeli right, which says shmum, right? Which is Ben Gurion's famous line to say the UN shmuin. Like, what do we care about international opinion? I don't see on the Israeli right, other than Netanyahu, and I would have said this about Bennett, although Bennett self-destructed politically, but Bennett and Netanyahu, I think, the remarkable thing about Netanyahu is that Netanyahu can move comfortably among the guys with the knitted kippahs, and he can move comfortably in a secular world, and he understands the discourse among both, and he can speak the language among both. Same thing with Bennett. There aren't very many Israelis who can do that. It's a real problem, I think, real problem.
We are running out of time.
I get it, but you have to respond to what I just said. You have to admit, you're not. But you yourself, you often find yourself in rooms full of guys with knitted kippot, right?
Yeah,
religious nationalists, and you're comfortable there. You don't sit there and think, "Holy shit, how did I end up here?" Right? But,
no, I don't.
But how many secular Israelis, when they find themselves in a room full of if they go to a wedding, if they go to a religious nationalist wedding, and everyone is dancing around with Israeli flags, and all of the speeches say what a blessing it is, what a privilege it is to raise your kid in the settlements, right? And they look at that and they think, oh my God, how did I end up here? Give me away. This
is a whole huge topic about an elite that's becoming post-national, which means in Israel post-Jewish, and for whom normality is being like everyone else as individuals, not like everyone else as our Declaration of Independence, as like all peoples. So originally Zionism was about self-determination, and the Ben-Gurion idea of normality is that we would be free to determine ourselves as Jews, while for these people, the permanent anti-right-wing crowd who also hates religion, to be normal is to be accepted in international forums and to be a citizen of the world. And this is why they are post-Jews.
But I'm saying something slightly different, because I'm saying that yes, the Israeli secular elite has gone silly globalist, right? And has lost in a lot of their calculations. When I listen to an Israeli minister of energy talking about how important it is to have wind turbines in the Golan, where helicopters might need to fly against Hezbollah, I think, man, you are really, why for what reason? What are those turbines going to do for Israel? Nothing at all. This is so far removed from a nationalist, from a notion that we have to build a state that can defend itself. So I understand what you're talking about, but the other side is that that how many religious nationalists you have who can speak English well, who can explain their position to an international elite in a way that doesn't horrify the international elite. You need that. You need that for the enterprise. You need it.
I'm sure we do. Part of my problem with the national religious is that a lot of them are Bennetts, and they want to find favor with the secular leftist elite and are willing to betray right-wing causes. So partly the problem, people on the right generally say that Netanyahu is far too moderate, and that this is so the position that I'm expressing here is I think mainstream on the right, And Netanyahu, I can't blame him because he has to deal with all these pressures. He can't deliver what the dream policy of the right, but he has to get along with all these obstacles, with all these pressures, with the lack of ammunition, with the Americans. He had to get along with Gantz. Now he has the opposition. He has to get along with Smotrich and Ben Gvir. So all these pressures, we understand that. But what we arrive at is not a right-wing government and a right-wing policy. And if there is a dilemma about, I don't think that is a serious dilemma about occupying the Philadelphia corridor. I think Netanyahu cannot allow our control of the Philadelphia corridor to slip away, because this will cause a real rift with his base. Anyway, I don't think we can cover all the rest of our topics. Do we want to say something about what's happening in Europe? Because in France, it seems like what is transpiring is it's as if they have read the book Submission by Michel Houellebecq, and now they're implementing it. So I'll deliver, if you don't mind, a short synopsis of that book. By the way, it's a very short, readable novel. After which Michel Houellebecq had to flee France, and now he lives in Ireland.
I did not know that. Yeah, I've actually never read the book. I have it on my bookshelf. So well, actually, my house burned down, so I don't have the bookshelf. I have it in a box.
It's amusing, and it's also interesting the way he treats Israel, because I'll say what the synopsis is, and then I'll remark about Israel, since this is the subject of our podcast.
But I just dropped this thing, like my house burned down. You're supposed to say, "Oh, Mike, I'm really sorry about that."
I think I've expressed that a few times.
Yes, but our viewers don't know that I have had a year from hell. They don't know that. I'm trying to get sympathy from the viewers.
I was too self-centered. You're right.
Yeah. Think about my relationship with our audience, please.
Yeah, of course. If you want to say a prayer for Mike, this is the chance. We don't have a pay box yet, but I can tell you, Mike and his wife are back in the original house. So the Mike, France is burning down, and you're stuck with your own house. Come on.
I'm talking about myself. How's that so selfish? Okay, go ahead.
Now let's talk about your work. So Michel Houellebecq. So Michel Houellebecq's novel is it's about the rise of Marine Le Pen, and the rise of Marine Le Pen creates a dynamic in which in order to stop fascism, the French left teams up with an Islamic party, and therefore the coalition of the radical left and the Islamists turns France into an Islamic nation, and it turns Sharia into the law of the land. And the narrator in the book is a professor, I think, in the Sorbonne, and he has a student named Miriam who is Jewish, with which he has sex. It's, if you ever read 2 lines of Houellebecq, it's always full of sexual descriptions, and so she's a great lay, by the way, this Jewish Miriam. And then are
you trying to get me to read it or not read it?
I don't know. How does that? What incentive does that give you?
I'm an asexual being. I live for ideas. That's all.
You're a Catholic, but so he says to Miriam, who is, when he's worried about the rise of Islam, he says to Miriam, "Well, you're the only person here who has somewhere to go. You can go to Israel. You're Jewish. Wow. You can go to Israel. I have nowhere to go." I don't know what he would think now, but it's a very striking part of the book because it's a, globalism.
I have to go read this now.
Let me just lay the map, because it's globalism, Islamism, and nationalism. And so nation states are the option, and the globalists are always in bed with the jihadists. And so Houellebecq, and this is why, it angered France immensely. By the way, in the end, professors at the universities acquiesce and think, well, maybe it's not such a bad idea to have more than one wife. And so, so all its peace, peace in Islamic France.
From my understanding of professors, though, they don't. Why the need for marriage?
But we should just say for our listeners who haven't been following the most recent news that this is exactly what happened in France, except that there's no Islamic party at the head of this coalition, but there is a communist party.
There's a leftist jihadist nexus, isn't there, or coalition? Let me tell you very briefly about an experience I had in France years ago that reminds me of what you're saying. I was there as a government official, and the embassy organized a dinner for me, and they brought this kid. I forgot his name. I stayed in contact with him for a while. I loved him, but I lost contact with him. If any of our viewers know who I'm talking about, I'd love to know his name. I'd love to try to reconnect with him. He's a novelist. And he's North African from the Kabyle, he's Berber, and he wrote a novel before. When did they have this enormous eruption of violence in the suburbs in Paris? It was like 2007, maybe. Anyway, around about that time frame, 2005, 2007. I've already forgotten. He wrote this novel about the suburbs in flames. And sent it to a publisher, and the publisher rejected it. And the editor wrote him and said, "I'm sorry, we don't publish science fiction." Right? Very dismissive. And weeks after receiving this very, very condescending rejection from the editor, the suburbs exploded in flames. And so I talked to the guy who was incredibly engaging, incredibly interesting. And then I was there over a weekend, and he took me out to the suburbs, to all the places that were where all the violence was. And it was an incredibly memorable trip for me because of his being my guide. Because in France, you go there. I don't speak French, other than a couple of sentences to get the coffee or something, and I don't really know I haven't spent a lot of time in the country, so it has all the elements that you're familiar with from living in the United States or spending time in Britain. It's a Western country and it has all the same elements that you're familiar with, but they're put together entirely differently. So. I go to this neighborhood. Like if I went to the equivalent in the United States of the neighborhoods that I went to in France as a white guy, I would feel threatened because people would make comments. They would say, "What are you doing here?" They may even be intimidating. But I'm there in these poor neighborhoods with Middle Easterners and Africans walking through the market. There are literally cars that were burned out the night before by the protesters, and there's no sense of violence or anything because it's all direct. They understand where it's all being directed at the state and at now state and Jews, then maybe Jews then too a little bit, I don't know, but certainly at the state institutions, including schools and libraries and so on. But anyway. It was fascinating, and I don't know where this story leads except to tell you that.
People here are thinking of the rise of the radical left and its support of the Palestinians, of Hamas in some cases, over and against Israel. You mentioned in the news bulletin the probably coming recognition of both France and Britain in a Palestinian state which does not exist, and I think we touched on this, and it was prickly on the clash of civilizations here, because Israelis keep waiting for the West to wake up and realize that this is not just Israel's war with Iran. This octopus has tentacles everywhere, and they are going to try and impose Sharia on Western countries, and they hate America. And I think I mentioned the survey done by Eagle Carmon of mosques in North America, in which anti-Semitic vitriol is the regular currency, and also the hatred of America. So Israelis are, I think, wishing in their hearts that Europe would start waking up and the United States will start waking up, not just, Mike, as you say, to the fact that Tehran is a danger to the West and to world order, but also that radical jihadism is also growing under their nose, and that we are also on the forefront of a larger, darker, more worrisome clash of civilizations.
Let's look on the bright side. What's bad for the Jews of France is good for Netanyahu. Isn't that where all the French Jews are in Israel?
No, a lot of them, a lot of very rich French Jews buy apartments on the beaches of Tel Aviv, and you can see if you sunbathe on the beach in Tel Aviv, you can see a lot of empty apartments in the towers because a lot of them are not here, and they have they're ready. In case things get really tough, they've got the... Yeah, but in case things get really tough, they have a $25 million apartment on the beach in Tel Aviv. So there's a limit to how tough things can get for them. But things can get tough for everybody here. If a war is coming with the...
No, it's serious stuff. I didn't mean to make light. I understood what you're saying is serious. And
I don't mind making we survived by making jokes on serious things, and so we'll skip the Holocaust jokes for now, but we'll wait for Holocaust Memorial Day. Mike, I think we are just ready for the dumbest take on the news, and I have a really, really funny dumb take on the news, so you start.
Okay, mine you may have seen. I usually try to look for my dumbest takes from the United States, but there was something I saw on Israeli Twitter that really made me laugh, but it made me think of you. So I wanted to bring it as the dumbest take. And this is Yair Golan, who standing in front of the cameras and calling on all of the opponents of Netanyahu and supporters of the hostages for prisoners deal to come out onto the streets and protest. And he says, look what's happening behind me. Look at. So it says, come out in your multitudes to the street. He says, look at what's happening behind me, as if there are large crowds behind him, and there's just a few scattered protesters. And it's genuinely funny. The guy, I don't know.
Even Haaretz, the Israeli press, as I interviewed Hanan Amiur, who is the editor of the Perspectiva, the press monitor site, and he said, the Israeli press is like the press in Arab countries. It's that bad, because there were, I don't know, on Saturday night there were again anti-Bibi protests, and the police said there were 10,000 people, and Ynet said 176,000. And 76,000, mind you.
176,000.
They don't mind exaggerating.
432 and a half.
They are just spewing. But now.
Wait. Let me finish with the dumbest take, though. Because if you would, I'd love it if you would splice that in so that people are watching on YouTube and subscribing on YouTube. Please subscribe on YouTube. We don't even have 1,000 subscribers yet, and we have 25,000 on Rumble. This is embarrassing. Yeah.
But we should say this at the beginning of the show, Mike. Next time, write it down.
Oh yeah, but if you got all the way till now and you're not subscribed, if you came this far,
subscribe.
But somebody then took Yair Golan's speech and they superimposed it. He's standing in front of an empty desert, and he said, "Look what's happening behind me." It's genuinely funny. So, and it made me think of you, because you always say that they're inflating these numbers. So put that on.
What I was saying now is that even we'll splice it in. Even Haaretz has been confessing that people don't show up anymore, and they don't know why. They don't know why. They're shocked.
I didn't understand where you were headed with that. I'm sorry. Okay, that's interesting.
צאו לרחובות, תראו מה קורה פה מאחוריי, סעו בהמוניכם, אנחנו, רק אנחנו, העם, נביא את העסקה, נביא את הפסקת האש, נביא את שיקום ישראל.
So they admitted it.
Yeah. But the funny thing is they can't come up with an explanation. They can't fathom why people are not willing to burn Israel up in the middle of the war. Because Netanyahu is the greatest danger to the human race for them. So my dumb mistake is actually, Yinon Magal, because you see,
wait, somebody, so I'm sorry to interrupt you, but somebody said that. Who said? Tom Friedman said that Netanyahu is the worst leader of Israel ever, but he's the worst leader of the Jews ever. I mean, that's 3,000 years of history. But somebody else said that he was the greatest threat to international peace in the world.
That was on the Haaretz Daily. I keep picking on them because the Haaretz,
you told me this. That's right.
The Haaretz Daily newsletter is the lowest form of journalism in Israel.
Let's forget about it. I thought someone I misremembered. Okay, go ahead.
So, Yinon Magal, you know who Yinon Magal is, and Yinon Magal did for the Israeli right what Rush Limbaugh did for the American right. It's joy. He inserted joy and humor, and his show, The Patriots, is just climbing and climbing against what he calls ערוצי התבהלה, the other channels of permanent hysteria and gloom, and so he's a very big star now. And, there's terrible incitement about Netanyahu. Just Amichai Shikli, the minister, put some of it on his Twitter. Netanyahu boged oyev ha'am. Netanyahu is a traitor and an enemy of the people. We will erase the memory of Netanyahu, and noose is what you deserve. Netanyahu should be shot in the forehead. This is all from the last 2 weeks in the media. So, and we know that they're not doing anything. The police is not doing anything. The attorney general is not doing anything, because there are two castes, right? They are snowflakes, and you can't say anything about them because anything is incitement. And about Netanyahu, you can say anything. So if you say anything about the right and the left, they give them security. And you can say about the right anything. And of course, the holiest figure for the left is the attorney general, Mrs. Gali Baharav Miara. So Yinon Magal started writing on Twitter, Gali Baharav Miara is a traitor and an enemy of the people. Testing. We shall erase the memory of Gali Baharav Miara. Testing. News is waiting for Gali Baharav Miara. Testing. And in the end, an investigation was begun against Yinon Magal.
Really?
I think they dropped it, but he really found a way to expose their hypocrisy in such a brilliant way. And the recent one, I just put it up here so I can pull it out. The recent one, this is from it's 5 days ago. Gali Baharav Miara החליטה לרצוח את החטופים. So Gali Baharav Miara has decided to murder the hostages, because this is what they're saying about Netanyahu. Yeah. Not accepting the deal.
And then he says testing?
Yeah.
How do you say testing in Hebrew?
Bdika. He said bdika. It's actually checking, but it's testing rings better in English. Well, I think that's all from us for today, and we will be with you again next Tuesday, same time, same place. Thank you for listening or watching.